Maury Odell is back in the studio for the first time in many years. Maury, it's so good to see you.
Thank you, Tony, very much. I appreciate that very much.
Well, you were here for how many years? You came, 76?
76. I was here with the company for 30, and I think on the morning show for 27 years, I believe.
You came here in the afternoon, as
yes,
I
recall.
did.
Yeah,
I came
that's
for the
right. It
afternoon
seems
show.
like a lot longer than that, Maury.
That's because I'm boring.
Hardly.
You're anything but boring.
It's hardly. Now, did Wally Osley hire you, or Carl? How
Carl
did that come
Venters
about?
hired me. In fact, I was planning to go back to Columbia, South Carolina, where I had been, and Carl got Charles to come and get me, and we came up here and negotiated a deal.
Yeah, Charles Stegall, who was a long-time
Who just
program
passed away
director.
just a few months ago.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you came in 76, and
76.
you started in the afternoon, but you had been a legend in South Carolina radio before you got here. I
That's
know you
right.
were in Columbia and in
Yeah.
Spartanburg.
Spartanburg.
And
I
you
was
did
there quite a
TV.
few years,
Didn't
quite
you
a
do
few
TV
years.
down there too?
Huh?
Did you do TV there too?
Once in a while at Channel 7, but
Yeah.
not often.
Okay.
And I did a little like weekend weather sometimes at Channel
Yeah.
10 in Columbia, but no big deal. I
Did
didn't really like doing television that much.
Did Carl and Charlie say why they wanted you?
No, they thought I had money.
You were going to be an investor.
Invest in this place. Boy, were they surprised.
So what?
Yeah.
So you adapted to the mornings, okay?
Yeah, that was not a problem. I had done it before. I did it in Spartanburg and one other place. I can't remember.
Gary Dornberg was sports director.
Yes, that's
and
right.
I suppose at first he came in and would do sportscasts with you.
Yeah, he would just drop in. You know, he came in there, but he didn't sit in with me until sometime after that. I can't remember how long it was, but I realized how smart he was. I mean, he really impressed me with his memory and how smart he was and his interests. He's almost what word I'm trying to think. A revolution, not revolution.
A Renaissance man.
A Renaissance man. He was
was.
almost a Renaissance man because he loved opera. He loved classical music. He loved sports better as well as Tony does.
Yeah, movies.
And movies and trivia
And,
and
he was our
history. And he was
host
quite
for
a history
opera
buff.
broadcast for years.
Yeah.
On the old WPTF FM before he moved over to,
That's right.
to
That's right.
AM. And you guys really did click. But I remember you were competitive on crossword puzzles
That's
every
right.
morning.
Yeah, and Gary never found this out, but I would go by the Dunkin' Donuts and get coffee and a couple of donuts.
Yeah.
I didn't like them when I was working for the Gamecocks. I wasn't crazy about them then, but I became.
Somebody you really struck up a close friendship with is Jim Falvey.
That's right. Jim and I were buddies. Now, I don't want anybody to interpret this the wrong way. I never gave him advice. He never asked me for advice, and I never gave it to him. But we somehow we just had a good thing going together.
Yeah.
Well, he had an amazing personality.
Yes, he
and
did.
a
He was
magnetic personality,
Absolutely.
for sure. Now, when you were here, whenever people listened to Maury Odell in the mornings, it wasn't just Maury, but it was your little nephew.
My nephew.
Your voice, too.
Yeah. That's right, Uncle Tony.
It was Uncle Maury. Of course it was. And everybody knew you that way.
And we used to call you Uncle Maury around here a lot of times, too.
So many people remember you on the air, and you knew so many people because of this job.
Yes, I did.
Famous and not so famous.
Right, absolutely. And I enjoyed every minute of it. And I liked going out of the station, too. I loved going on remote.
Me too.
And I liked going out with the salespeople and meeting people. I knew Fred Anderson and all these other people that I knew, and I thought it was great. I was making new friends every day. They opened a new parking lot at the airport. He sold them the morning show, and I'm out there in the dark with Bob Royal. And we're the only two people there promoting a parking lot.
I know Bob Royal was happy about that, wasn't he?
I told Don, I said, when we get back to the studio, I'm shooting you. I'm going to kill you right on the spot.
Well, you mentioned Bob Royal. I mean, he was a legendary engineer here who came here, Mike, early 40s, I guess?
Well,
mid-40s?
I think he came here in the late 30s maybe and then went to war.
Yeah, and then came back.
I don't think he ever worked at another station, did he?
Not that I'm aware of, although he was from Greensboro, I think.
Yeah, he may have worked at BIG at some point.
You know, it's ironic. Still, back in our engineering shop, there's a toolbox that says Royal on it. So it's like his legacy still
I'm
lives.
afraid to open it, though.
Well, you got here, not only was Gary here, but our good friend Johnny Hood was here, too.
Yep, Johnny Hood, that's right. Johnny and I played golf at least twice a week together. And plus, we just became fast friends very quickly.
There's a great picture on one of the old program schedules from the late 70s or early 80s. You and Johnny together.
I don't remember that.
It was one of those charity things where you rode the bike for charity.
Yeah.
And I can't remember which charity it was, but I remember getting on the bike, and we rode probably 10 miles all total. But we'd get to going really good, and I'd stop pedaling. Johnny would turn around and look at me, and he's huffing and puffing.
So y'all didn't wreck or anything? No problems?
I'm surprised.
Yeah. You knew you were fast friends with a few governors, famous politicians like Jim Hunt.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, I love Jim because he made the show better. I remember one story he told. Nobody had ever had him on the air as a co-host, and he accepted immediately to do that. But he was telling me about his father, and he said his father would buy a radio and have somebody solder 680 on it so you couldn't change the channel.
Wow.
And I thought, that's one of the greatest stories I ever heard. And what a testament for this radio station to have somebody that fond of it.
That is fantastic.
Sure did.
And I know that you became really, really good friends with the former mayor of Cary, Coca Booth, too.
Yes, Coca Booth. Isabella Cannon, the mayor of Raleigh, and I were friends because I would call her every year on her birthday. Oh. And I think I talked to her, I want to say she was 93 when she passed away, but I may be off.
She got some national publicity as the little old lady in tennis shoes mayor at that time.
And I think she was the first mayor of a capital city in the United States. I'm not sure about that. We'd have to look that up.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
And they started talking about spaghetti squash. And they had spaghetti squash at the farmer's market. Then they started ad-libbing about macaroni squash in Sampson County.
Yeah.
And they just expanded on that for 15 minutes, and they had it. People were going to the farmer's market trying to find it.
Well, the macaroni tree was there.
Yeah.
And they were going to turn it into an entire farm because they had grown some tobacco, but they thought they'd have more success.
So you know of what I speak.
Tree.
Oh, and they went on with that for a long, long time because at one point Bart was doing an afternoon show with Wayne Ennis, too, and they did the same thing on the afternoon show about the macaroni trees.
And changing your air and your tires each season.
The summer air and the winter air in the tires. Well, not only were you doing the morning show for so long, but also a lady came up with a Maury Odell cookbook, and it was one that had all of our pictures in it. And she asked me to autograph that page. Yeah. And she said, well, tell Maury I need another autograph from him.
I'll be happy to do it anytime you call me.
Well, they're on eBay. You can find Maury Odell cookbooks on eBay.
And
Bart's, too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Charlie Gaddy, actually, who started the show, actually had a cookbook.
He did, yes.
Of which I own. So
I think Gaddy's was both cooking and also helpful hints, too.
Yeah, and I think Bart did a helpful hints book, too, at one point.
I think he did. Yeah. I think he did.
And, of course, with Bart, he came in twice a day, 9 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock at night. Yep. And then he became news director for a while,
That's right, he
too.
did. Wonderful husband.
Yeah, he was definitely there.
Raley.
And he was a great boss because he hired me, thank God.
That's
well, he refused to hire me. Wayne Ennis finally hired me.
Yeah.
But, you just won't let that go,
will you, Charles, like 25 years later, I saw Charles and he said, I might have made a mistake not hiring you because you've been here for a long time.
Well, I've got to ask you a question. Are you still going to minor league ballparks?
Yeah, and I still do Durham Bulls public address. So
I knew that.
I'm all over the place, getting ready to head to Arizona to do Arizona Fall League here in a couple of weeks.
He goes to the most obscure baseball
He
venues
and
of the world.
Rush Limbaugh were there, weren't you?
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
he was in Arizona.
Yeah, he was there at one point,
About
and
that. Now Maury's interviewing us.
That's right. Well, he knew us for long enough.
Well, he knows how to do it.
He can do it and do it so seamlessly, moving in like that too. But yeah, it's one of those things you just get so used to.
Mm-hmm.
You remember Charles used to use green ink.
Yes.
And he would write, "Let's discuss."
Oh, yes.
And do you remember the story about Hap's vacation request?
No.
Well, Hap had put in a vacation request, and in green ink, and I don't know where it was Hood. Do you remember?
It was Gary Dornberg.
It was
who
Dornberg.
did it.
He wrote, "Let's discuss CBS" with Charles B. Steagall on it, and Hap hit the ceiling when he came.
And when a 6'6" man hits the ceiling, it really happens. So there's just kind of little things that happen. And Gary really had a wonderful sense of humor.
Yes,
I mean, he was
did.
funny,
Yes,
but
he did.
he played in the early days. He played practical jokes.
Oh, yes, he
Good.
did. And he and Bart would call the Queen of England.
Oh yeah,
You remember that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Bart called Khrushchev one night.
And he
too.
also called the Pope. They called they called the Vatican. And Bart was in his cups that day.
He was.
Yeah.
He was. Up to
God
his
bless
ears.
him. But he was. Perry Como's home phone number.
No kidding. Of course, he was.
He lived in Florida in the winter.
Yeah.
And in our mountains, Saluda or I think it was Saluda, around that area, not near Hendersonville, in the summer.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, most delightful human being you ever met.
He was that.
He was just as down home, and I remember I'd never asked anybody for an autograph, never. And I got one from him, and it was on the Duke Children's Playbook or whatever,
the Duke
publicity.
Children's Classic.
And
Yeah.
he was in charge of that for many
Well, he was the
years.
godfather.
Yeah.
That's right. And I asked him one night over there, I said, "I'm going to do this." I said, "I've never done it before," but I said, "My sister's such a big fan. She loves Perry Como." And he said, "She loves old has-been singers." And he signed a nice personal note to my sister. That's the only man I ever asked for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there were a lot of celebrities because of Perry Como involved with the Duke
Yes,
Children's
that's right.
Classic.
Tons of them.
Yeah,
And
Buddy
we used to go out
Hackett.
and do a broadcast for Poolside from the
Yeah, Friday. That's
pre-party
right.
on
The
Friday
poolside
nights for
party. That's
years.
right.
And that was it was out at one of the hotels at RTP.
It was at the
yeah.
old Governor's Inn.
Yeah, Governor's Inn. That's right.
And did that for for a long time.
I remember Frank Sinatra came
Yep.
to that. He did not play. He came and sang and then
Yeah.
left. He sang at the Coliseum.
Yeah, that's right. I say, but TV is not intimate, not like radio, because I go back so far, where you listened to the radio and you didn't have TV, and these great shows that they had on then, and were so good, and yet you'd literally sit around the radio and listen to great shows.
And I think morning shows in particular, it brings an intimacy because you're waking up with that person
That's
every
exactly
morning.
right.
Did you have a hero? Did you have someone that you kind of stylized?
Well, and I didn't stylize myself by him, but I always liked Ty Boyd.
Well, I can
always
understand
liked Ty. And I think he started at my hometown station, WBCU in Union.
I did not.
I don't think he was there a long time.
Yeah.
They had all the people that were at BCU when it was first put on the air became executives with networks and things.
Oh my.
And it's time to go home.
Yeah.
But this was a great place for me. I knew, and I can say this honestly, when I got here, and Pat stayed in South Carolina for I think 2 or 3 months while we sold our house and that sort of thing. But I called her one day and I said, "We have not made a mistake. You are going to love this place. You're going to love this city." And I was never in doubt. I'd been here about 2 weeks, and I realized this is a great place to be. And it is a great place to be.
Yeah.
And it's
and
been
you
a
owned
great
it.
station for so many years. And
Yes.
when I got here in 1978 and Mike got here, 3 years before that. I couldn't believe that they actually had hired me at WPTF because it had been a lifelong goal to get there. And I know Johnny Hood felt the same way.
Yep.
And because of the chance to work with people like you, that's what made it such a special place to
Well,
come
in our day back then, if you went to a 50,000-watt station, that was a big move. And because most of them were in big cities.
Right.
I worked at WSB in Atlanta, for example. Welcome South Brother. And did a newscast from the city desk of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution at midnight 2 nights a week.
Wow.
And stuff like that. It's just really cool
A lot of people gave you credit. The ratings, and the bias showed that.
I almost never paid that debt off either. All that credit they gave me.
You don't owe anybody anything.
No, you certainly don't. And Maury, it's been so good to see you again today. And don't be a stranger.
I promise I won't.
No.
And I want to appreciate both of you, Mike and Tony, for having me here to reminisce a little bit about how great this radio station is, because it has a history and a legacy that very few stations have.
That's true.
And this one has it, and they should be very, very proud of the past.
And you should be very proud of the role you played in
And
it.
I'm very proud of having been here, part of it.
As we approach 100 years.
I know.
How about that?
That's incredible. We were doing the same thing in 1958 as a disc jockey as they're doing right now on a lot of the FM stations.
Absolutely.
You know, you have two things. You have a slogan. I don't want to name one because they might get mad at me, but you know, we've got the best hot dog in town, you know.
Yeah.
And they have that one slogan and the call letters, and that's all you were allowed to say.